Hey, Lux On Demand family. I am Pastor Andy, also known as Chino Mage, and I am super excited to welcome you to our YouTube channel. Now, normally we do live church services every single Wednesday night over at twitch.tv/Lux Digital Church, starting at 8:30 p.m. EST. It's a whole lot of fun getting the chance to talk with you live and really interact with you there. But our church mainly gathers on Discord, and you'll see the link below and in all of our profiles. We'd love to get the chance to hang out with you week in and week out. But for now, sit back and relax as we get ready for a new talk here on YouTube.
Hello and welcome to Lux Digital Church. My name is Mark and I am the lead pastor here at Lux. And if you're joining us for the first time tonight, thank you so much for stopping by and making us a part of your week. If you came in with Jade's Raid or you're joining us over in VR chat tonight, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. If you're joining us later on as part of our on-demand family on YouTube or podcast or here on Twitch VOD, thanks for stopping by and hanging out with us as well and giving us a little bit of your time. Tonight, we are in the sort of tail end of a 5-week-long collection of talks that's focused on relationships. It's part of our year-long emphasis here at Lux on the word home. And in each series, we've looked at a different room in the house. And in this series, we're in the kitchen. And the key statement that has strung all of the messages together so far and will continue to do tonight is this: belonging begins at the table. Now, we spent this last year talking about all sorts of different things. We have talked about repentance. We've talked about what it really means to be a church. We've spent 12 weeks just in one singular book of the Bible, going from beginning to end. We've talked about what the good life is. We've talked about how to have a close and intimate relationship with God. And it has been an amazing season as we've dove into each of these subjects. And over the past 3 weeks, we've been really diving deep into relationships. On week 1, Pastor Andy brought a great message about how life is not a single player activity, but it's a multiplayer. We're supposed to do life with people. God intended us for relationships. The following week, Pastor Alex guest spoke and he talked about family. Last week, I talked about building long-lasting friendships. And this week, we're going to talk about what is probably the most important, or at least the most stressed about, thought about, and has the most investment in it relationship in all of our lives, which is romantic relationships. Yep, we're talking about singleness, dating, and marriage this week. We're going to dive in to those sometimes elusive, sometimes challenging, and oftentimes a huge blessing romantic relationships in our lives. And no matter what your relationship status is, I believe we have something for you. We're going to dive into what the Bible has to say about romantic relationships. And spoiler, out of all of the type of relationships, I think this has some of the most outside of our relationship with God. God talks a lot about our relationship with our spouse and about our relationship with loved ones, people that we love and, we're attracted to. Other than that, it talks about our relationship with God more than anything, but then our relationship in terms of our romantic relationships. And so we're going to dive into that. We're going to look at what the Bible has to say. I'm going to touch on that tonight. And then I'm also going to give a couple of tips, just like I did last week, was for singles, for people who are dating, and for people who are married. Now, before we dive into it, I do just want to give a quick disclaimer. And that disclaimer is that tonight, you're not going to hear me in the context of dating and marriage and relationships. I'm not going to be talking at all about the LGBTQ plus community. Now, you could make one of two assumptions from that. Either you could assume that's because I am affirming and allied with that movement, or you could assume that I'm too cowardly to speak the truth on the subject. But neither of those things are the case. In fact, I have spoken about the LGBTQ plus community in the past. We had an entire sermon that was dedicated just to that. And if you want to check it out and see where we stand as a church, where I stand personally, you can check that out. In fact, if we can hit exclamation point sermon in the chat, Samus, I actually forgot to give you this, but if you get exclamation point sermon in the chat, it'll actually give you a link on YouTube over to that message. And the reason why I'm not going to be digging deeply into it tonight is because it's a huge subject, and it's not something that you should spend sort of 5 minutes on an offshoot in another sermon. And so instead of doing that, just assume that while I'm talking about singleness, dating, and marriage in the context of romantic relationships, I am talking about heterosexual relationships. Now, I do believe that the advice that I'm going to give tonight and what the Bible teaches us is probably beneficial no matter what type of relationship, but I am going to be talking about heterosexual relationships tonight, and I'm not going to be giving that disclaimer or saying it over and over and over again. I'm just doing it at the front of the message. Okay, with that hi, Sunshine, it's good to see you. With that disclaimer, with a party of 3, thanks for the raid, Sunshine. With that disclaimer out of the way, I want to talk about a 4-letter word, and that word is the word love. Love. I think we all like the word love. Our world is completely love obsessed. We have entire TV shows and series that are dedicated to watching other people find love, like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, although I'm not sure how much love is being found on those 2 shows. The point is, we have an entire industry that's about showing people falling in love. And then we have a huge industry in online dating that's helping people find love. In fact, there's a different online dating service for pretty much anybody, no matter who you are. In fact, one of the ones that I found, I have to bring it up, and I have to make sure that I get it right because I thought it was amazing and also a little bit hilarious. And I'm going to have a hard time. It was called Dating for Muggles. I literally found one. It's datingformuggles.com, and it's so you can find local singles who also love Harry Potter. And to be honest with you, tonight, that might be all you need. That might be the whole message. You might just be off to Dating for Muggles to find your future loved one. You could close me down, and that could be it. But seriously, our culture is love obsessed. We want to help people find love. We simply love love. I mean, I can even remember as a teenager, a young teenager, right? Maybe not even a teenager, like late middle school, just like really wanting to have a girlfriend. Like all the cool kids had like the cool guys, man, they had girlfriends and like, had that romantic relationship thing going on. Unfortunately for me, I was like skinny and I had a unibrow and all my shirts had like American wildlife on them. And so like, I wasn't really much of a love expert, right? I didn't have, what do the kids call it today? Riz. I didn't have that, right? Whatever it is. I was just sort of like a weird kid with a wolf on my shirt, right? But like before that was ironic. Like I was like the kid who just bought all of his shirts from like national parks or something. And so like, I didn't have girlfriends, right? I remember I got my first girlfriend like my 10th grade year and we dated and I was like super obsessed. And then she broke up with me after a month and I was like completely devastated by it. And I've never become much of a love expert, really, on it. Like, and you can ask my wife, she'll tell you right off the bat. If she's in chat yet, I'm not a love expert. Like I don't have it all figured out, and I'm certainly not going to be able to speak from experience to tell you all of the things about love. But my wife and I now have been married for 12 years, and while it's certainly not, storybook, sort of like Princess in Distress, Knight in Shining Armor, the forbidden love of the Romeo and Juliet stories, what Jen and I have is really genuinely beautiful and incredibly life-giving. And I know how important it is for all of us if we want a relationship, right? Some people are blessed with singleness, and I'm sorry that this message isn't so much for you, like you like being single, but for most of us, we love love. We desire a deep relationship. However, we also can see very clearly what it looks like when a love-obsessed culture in world loses grasp of what love actually is. Because amongst a culture that we have that loves love, and that's a beautiful thing, guys. Like God literally describes, God says, I am love. He is love incarnate. And it's a good thing for us to love love because God is love. But when our roots and what love actually is get uprooted and torn out, well, we end up with a really nasty and sometimes polluted idea of what love is, which is why we oftentimes see just the rise in divorce and infidelity. We see a pornography addiction epidemic across our culture. We see sexual abuse, the mistreatment, the human trafficking epidemic is love that has been completely twisted and misunderstood and twisted into nasty desire and destructive drives. And so we see the beautiful parts of love, but we also have firsthand experiences in this life about what love looks like when it's misrepresented and when it goes horribly wrong. Well, as it turns out, the Bible talks a lot about love as well. In fact, it talks about love so much that the Greeks had 4 different words for love. Now, much of the New Testament is Greek, and the Old Testament and the parts of the New Testament that aren't Greek all get translated into Greek in a version of the Bible that we call the Septuagint. So in the Septuagint, there are multiple words for love. Like, for example, one of the words for love is agape. Agape love. Maybe if you grew up in the church, you're familiar with these types of terms, right? Agape love is unconditional love, oftentimes used to describe God's love for us, his children, right? Then you have like a phileo or philios love. This is the word that's used to create the word Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. This is the love between friends, right? The love between friends. Beyond that, we also have the Greek word for love that is a love between families, and I'm gonna find it. I don't know how I got like so lost inside of my scripture or inside of my thing. Storge is familial love or family love, the love of a parent to a child and a child to a parent. And then there's one other type of love in the Greek language, and it's the word eros. And eros in the Greek is more of a romantic love, but actually erotic love or sexual desire as well. So the idea of romantic love, sexual desire, and eroticism are all brought together in this word eros. Now, you might have heard all 4 of these different types of love in the Greek language talked about, but did you know that only 3 of these types of love are ever used in the Bible? Phileo is used in the Bible, right? Agape is certainly used in the Bible. Our family love is used in the Bible, but the word eros is not used anywhere in the Bible. It's completely absent from the Greek version of the New Testament and the Greek translation of the Old Testament. Why is that? Now, if you grew up in the church or you have just like a sort of a cursory understanding of the Bible, you might know there's an entire book in the Bible that's dedicated to sort of the sexual attraction and love between a young man and a young woman. It's called the Song of Solomon, and it has excerpts like this. We're going to look at Song of Solomon in chapter 4, where the man is talking, and then again in chapter 6, where the young woman is talking. Let me read these to you. It says this: the young man says, "Your neck is as beautiful as the Tower of David, jeweled with the shield of 1,000 heroes. Your breasts are like 2 fawns, twin fawns of a gazelle grazing among the lilies." Then 2 chapters later, the young woman says this: "My lover has gone down to his garden, to his spice beds, to browse in the gardens, to gather the lilies. I am my lover's, and my lover is mine. He browses among the lilies." He browses. In one, he says, twin fawns of a gazelle grazing among the lilies are the woman's chest. And in the next, the woman says, my lover browses amongst the lilies, right? If there's anything in the Bible that would be eros love, you would assume that it would be in the book of the Song of Solomon that we would use the word eros, erotic, sexual love, romantic love. In fact, even in the book of 1 Corinthians, a passage that is read at almost every wedding. If there's any place where a scripture would be translated in Greek to eros love, you would think it would be the quintessential wedding scripture, right? It says this in the book of 1 Corinthians. It says, "Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres." The word in both of these, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, the Septuagint, and in the original Greek that 1 Corinthians is written in, never once does it use the word eros to describe this type of love. Over and over again, it uses the word agape, over and over again. Why? If they had a word that was supposed to represent romantic love in the Greek language, why would they never use it in the scriptures to describe this type of romantic love between a man and a woman? Well, the truth is that the church thousands of years ago had similar problems to what we had today, which is love unchained and unrestrained, destroying people's lives instead of being a blessing to them. Now, today we might see that through an epidemic of pornography, or we might see that through destructive lifestyles, sexual abuse, right? We might see it through a lot of things. Back in the day, it was predominantly seen through shrine prostitutes. And so people who would literally be at a place of worship, and you would go and you would sleep with them, have sex with them at the shrine as a form of worship to pagan gods. And so the Bible, which is written 2,000 years ago and then is translated into Greek throughout the Septuagint, the Bible authors and the Bible translators wanted to distance themselves so much from the dark side of love. Love unbound, love without restraint, right? Love that's twisted and screwed up, and love that hurts rather than love that blesses. They wanted to distance themselves so far from it that they never even used the word eros in the scriptures. They only used the word agape. But something beautiful that God displays to us comes out of that, and that is this: that deep down in each of our lives, even if we go in search of eros from time to time, even if we find ourselves consistently being pulled back into brokenness, into sexual sin, into not just attraction, right, but into something really dark, that all of us deep down, we long for agape. We long for a selfless, self-sacrificing, loving, unconditional partner. All of us want that. We want the same thing that Jesus describes himself as to us, his church and bride. We want that in our own lives. We all long for this self-sacrificing love. And even if you feel called to singleness, we want to see this in our relationships. We want to experience agape. There's something beautiful about the fact that the scriptures won't even use the word for erotic love, because it draws our attention back in. Draws our attention towards God's love for us. So if this is something that we long for, how do we get it and how do we maintain it? Because we know, man, sometimes dating is really hard. Being single can be incredibly lonely, and a lot of marriages end in divorce. So how do we seek healthy, life-giving, agape love, romantic relationships that result in deep, life-giving, healthy marriages? The thing is, I think the Bible actually has something to tell us about exactly that. I'm going to take some principles today from the story of two people. There's actually one book in the Bible that covers the dating journey and marriage of two individuals. Their names are Ruth and Boaz. We actually met Ruth last week when we talked about friendship. I talked about how her husband, her father-in-law, and her brother-in-law had all tragically died, and her mother-in-law, Naomi, had told Ruth to stay behind in her land, and Naomi was going to go back to her homeland of Israel. And Ruth devoted herself to staying with her mother-in-law, this deep sort of soul-level friendship that the two of them had together. Our story actually picks up between Ruth and a man named Boaz shortly after that. Ruth and Naomi have returned to Israel, and Naomi has sent Ruth out into the fields to gather grain, or to glean. Now, this is important, so I want to get this cultural context into place. Gleaning was something that happened in ancient culture, specifically in Israel, where the people that would come through and harvest a field would not always harvest the corners or the edges or everything off the stalks of grain in the field. And then the poor and the destitute could come behind them and harvest the grain that was left behind. Because for an ancient world woman like Ruth, who was widowed and had no opportunity to remarry, well, she had one of three choices in life. She could beg, she could glean, or she could become a prostitute. Those were her only real options for being able to provide for herself and Naomi. Ruth decides to glean, and that's where our story picks up. Let's take a look at Ruth chapter 2, verses 2 through 7. We're going to read a good bit of scripture tonight. One day, Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go into the harvest fields to pick up the stalks of grain left behind by anyone who is kind enough to let me do it." Naomi replied, "All right, my daughter, go ahead." So Ruth went out to gather grain behind the harvesters. And as it happened, she found herself working in a field that belonged to Boaz, a relative of her father, Elimelech. While she was there, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you," he said. "The Lord bless you," the harvesters replied. Then Boaz asked his foreman, "Who is that young woman over there? Who does she belong to?" And the foreman replied, "She is the young woman from Moab who came back with Naomi. She asked me this morning if she could gather grain behind the harvesters. She has been hard at work ever since, except for a few minutes rest in the shelter." Here we find the first of 4 P's. I'm not usually like a 4 P's or a 4 T's type of preacher, but we're going to go through 4 P's that I think are help with the sort of forming the bedrock of healthy singleness, dating, and marriage. The first P that we're going to look at tonight is this: pursue. Pursue. Ruth goes out into the fields to glean, and Boaz, the field's owner, comes by and notices Ruth. He notices her. I don't know if it's her looks. I don't know if she's just different. I don't know if he just didn't commonly see her around. But either way, he goes to his foreman. He checks in. "How's the work going today? Yeah, we're getting more grain than we thought, less grain than we thought. The section, whatever." They kind of chit-chat back and forth at some point. But then Boaz asks about Ruth. He inquires about her. He begins the process of pursuit. Men. And I'm going to be honest with you guys tonight. Like, as we go through the 4 P's, it's going to be for guys and for girls. But guys, a lot of this stuff, when it comes to romantic relationships, it does sort of rely on us. I think that women naturally sort of understand romantic relationships a little bit better. Maybe not all, but a lot of them do, right? A lot of us guys, like, we're pretty much just at default a little bit dense and clueless, right? We don't really notice things. We're not picking up on hints, right? Like, girls, I don't know if you ever saw those memes where it's like, "I wonder what he's thinking about," and he's just like thinking about painting Warhammer minis like the whole time. Like, I think that is kind of like how guys' heads are. Like, what he's thinking about? He's thinking about World of Warcraft Classic, probably, right? He's not thinking about anything real deep right now. And so I think a lot of these things are for us, for men, right? But here's the thing: Boaz initiates, he pursues. Guys, the first P and the responsibility on us is to pursue. When it comes to dating, when you're single, it's about pursuing. It's about putting yourself out there. It's about stepping out, and it's about taking a risk. It's about expressing interest. It's about, you have to be the one who initiates. I know that it's scary. Listen, nobody likes to be rejected, but can I just tell you that if you think finding just the right woman who's not going to reject you and dating her and then marrying her means that you get to live a life free of rejection, then can I get any married men in here in the chat to throw a 5 in chat and just agree with me? Like, marriage is sometimes just the beginning of rejection. Like, it's not the end of it, guys. It's just like, that's it. Like, that's part of the experience. Like, get used to, as a man especially, just get used to rejection. It is part of being just a resilient man. Like, every resilient man has just gotten used to the fact that sometimes frequently, and sometimes consistently, we get turned down. That is just reality. Now, I want to be really clear. This isn't a mandate to stalk. God didn't say, go and stalk. Boaz didn't stalk Ruth. He pursued Ruth. And in today's day and age, I just have to be really clear. Pursuing a woman does not mean taking a picture of your loins unsolicited and sending it to her. That is not pursuit. Stop doing that. Do not just send unasked for pictures to people on the internet. A lot of guys get in trouble for that. Too many guys are doing that. I don't know what the draw is, or what guys think people are how anyone is going to respond positively to it. But yeah, no loin pics, please. Stop doing that. Clip it. Yeah. Okay. That is not pursuit. That's not pursuit. There's genuine risk and genuine interest showed in pursuit. Women who are here today, especially if you're single, you're looking to be dating, or maybe you are dating, are you worthy of being pursued? Are you worthy of being pursued? I asked that question because if you notice, it doesn't talk about Ruth's look. I'm not asking, like, do you hit the gym? Do you got that, like, really spicy profile picture on your dating profile? I'm asking you, do you exhibit the characteristics, do you exhibit the character of somebody that should be pursued? Boaz has interest in Ruth. He asks his foreman, but why does Boaz ultimately pursue Ruth? Well, it's because of her sacrifice and her loyalty. Boaz knows that Ruth could be making easier money, either begging or having sex. And instead, she's here in the fields in the heat of the day gleaning. She has a good work ethic. She's only rested for a few moments over there in the shelter. She has loyalty and faithfulness. She's left her people of Moab to come with her mother-in-law to protect, and she's out here gleaning to be able to provide for her mother-in-law. Boaz notices her character. Whenever I first encountered Jen, one of the things that really attracted me to her was her righteousness and her modesty. And yes, there was a spark, there was a point, like I was interested in her, I desired to pursue her. But one of the things that really spoke to me is like, man, I really didn't want to mess this thing up. I distinctly remember I was sort of like dating around. I'd gone out with a couple of girls, nothing very serious at the time. And I was like, man, before I asked Jen, her name's Eder, on a date, man, she's someone who I could marry. I want to make sure I get my crap together, right? I got to make sure that I have character worthy of her character. Her character was so high, and she lived that out in such a beautiful way. It's like I wanted to pursue her. I was interested, but I wanted to pursue her because of her character. Men, are you pursuing the right women? Are you overlooking really great girls in your life right now? If you're a single guy, are you overlooking great women because you have fallen for the Eros trap, which is like a 2,000-year-old way of saying, have you just fallen for thirst traps? Are you more interested in what skin she's willing to show online than you are in who she actually is? Are you missing really awesome women in your life that God could be putting in your path because you're more interested in Eros than you are in agape? And guys, if you're married, girls, if you're married here, pursuit doesn't end. Your wife wants to know that you desire to be with her. Like Peter Parker in Spider-Man 1 through 3. Yepter, it's good to see you. Welcome in. Your wife wants to know that you want to be with her. Your wife wants to know that you're still interested in her. Your wife wants to know that you're continuing to explore and get to know one another, even years into marriage. Your wife wants to know that she's more important to you than the new Silk Song game, that your interest in her exceeds football, right? She wants to know that you genuinely want to pursue her. Continue to pursue your wife. Women, continue to try to exhibit and show lives that are worthy of God-given, loving agape pursuit. So the first P, pursuit. Our next P comes from just after this in Ruth chapter 2, starting in verse 8. It's just two verses 8 and 9. Let me dig into it here. It says this: Boaz went over and said to Ruth, listen, my daughter, stay right here with us when you gather grain. Don't go to any other fields. Stay right behind the young women working in my field. See which part of the field they are harvesting and then follow them. I have warned the young men not to treat you roughly, and when you are thirsty, help yourself to the water they have drawn from the well. The second P is protect. Even in broad daylight, Ruth, who was a widow, who had no one to protect her, was at a very vulnerable place in the field with these strange men that she didn't know. Boaz goes out of his way to carve out and create a safe space for Ruth to be able to harvest, to be able to provide for herself and for her mother-in-law. He steps in to shield her and to protect her. Guys, you have a mandate, a God-given mandate, I believe, to protect the girl that you're with, to protect your wife, to protect the girls around you. We have a God-given mandate to protect women. I believe we have a God-given mandate to protect children. We have a God-given mandate to protect those who cannot protect themselves or who are too weak to protect themselves. Now, ladies, this does not mean that you are defenseless. It doesn't mean that you're helpless. I'm not trying to propagate some damsel in distress, Disney princess idea at all. I'm sure there are some ladies who are in chat tonight who could kick my butt. Like, I'm sure there's some of you out there, man, you're fully capable of defending yourself. I'm simply saying that as a man in the relationship, God has given us a mandate to step in and to protect. And it's not just to step in and protect our romantic partner, right? Our girlfriend or our wife. It's also to protect those, once again, that can't protect themselves. I have a mandate to protect my friends' wives. If we're out hanging out and I see someone who's not being cool, it's my mandate to step in and protect them. It's my mandate to step in and protect my daughters. It's my mandate to step in and protect relatives. There's something about a man who strikes his girlfriend or who abuses his wife, a man who physically abuses. There's something wrong way beyond someone just getting hurt. right? When two men fight or two women fight or whatever, like we maybe we think, oh, it's not good that two people, like somebody's fighting and someone's getting hurt, but there's something that's so viscerally wrong about a man striking or beating a woman because it goes against his God-given mandate to protect the very thing he's turned his back on and has now mistreated. And as a husband, listen, it's my job to protect my wife. It's my job to protect my kids. This doesn't mean that my wife is defenseless. She certainly is not. She's not defenseless, but it does mean that I'm fully prepared to protect our home. It does mean that I would gladly step in front of a bullet for my wife or for either of my daughters any day of the week. It means that I take very seriously my mandate to provide protection, to provide a safe place for them. It means that I'm to provide a safe spiritual place inside of my family for us to have deep discussions about spirituality and about Jesus, and a safe place for them to spiritually engage and ask questions about faith and to have doubts. It means I'm to provide a safe emotional space. I should have control over my anger, control over my tongue. A lot of guys, man, we puff out our chest. We feel like we can physically protect, but we completely assault. We bring danger, we bring fear, we bring trembling into other areas of our relationship when it comes to emotions, because we react to everything in anger. We react to everything in aggression because we haven't tamed our tongue, and stuff comes out of our mouths that we ought not say, things that are harmful and hurtful. Protection goes so far beyond just physical protection. It's also providing safety spiritually. It's providing safety emotionally. It's providing safety sexually. It's providing safety relationally. It is setting down, it's serving and protecting those that God has entrusted to us to protect. Women, I'm asking you, if you have a man in your life that desires to protect you in these ways, let him. Let him. He's not being misogynistic, right? He's not being egotistical. He's not being a narcissist. He is responding to a God-given impulse to protect. The first is pursue. We're to pursue, put ourselves out there, to put at risk, to be worthy of pursuit. The next is to protect, to be willing to be protected. And that protection eclipses just physical protection. It goes into all aspects and area of life. Boaz protected Ruth. Then we see our third P in that same chapter, just a couple of verses later. We're going to look at chapter 2, verses 14 through 19 in the book of Ruth. Let's look. At mealtime, Boaz called to her, "Come over here and help yourself to some food. You can dip your bread in the sour wine." So she sat with his harvesters, and Boaz gave her some roasted grain to eat. She ate all she wanted and still had some left over. When Ruth went back to work again, Boaz ordered his young man, "Let her gather grain right among the sheaves without stopping her." She's no longer gleaning. She's just harvesting with everybody else. "And pull out some heads of barley from the bundles and drop them on purpose for her." In other words, leave stuff behind. "Let her pick them up and don't give her a hard time." So Ruth gathered barley there all day. And when she beat out the grain that evening, it filled an entire basket. She carried it back into town and showed it to her mother-in-law. Ruth also gave her the roasted grain that was left over from her meal. "Where did you gather all this grain today?" Naomi asked. "Where did you work? May the Lord bless the one who helped you." So Ruth told her mother-in-law about the man in whose field that she had worked. She said, the man I worked with today is named Boaz." The third P is provide. It's to pursue, then to protect, than to provide. We have a mandate to provide. Guys who are single and dating, this is going to look different for if you're married versus if you're single or dating. If you're single and dating, you need to be able to provide. So that means if you want to ask somebody out on a date, you better have a job. You better have a job. You better work. You better have enough resources in order to actually provide for that. I know a lot of guys, man, in today's world who are like complaining, "I can't make enough money. I'm really broke." But then you look at how many skins they have on League of Legends or how decked out their Clash of Clans clan is. And it's like, are you really broke, or do you just have screwed up priorities? Like, are you broke, or are your priorities something other than having a healthy, sustainable, life-giving romantic relationship with a woman? Because if you want that, you have to give up something else. When Jen and I first started dating, she paid for nothing. Now, I wasn't trying to impress her. I didn't want her to think I was going to be rich. She knew for a fact, Jen knew full well, that she was never going to be rich if she married me. But this is something that I wanted her to know. In fact, there was one point, she's in college. I was out of college. She was in a sorority. She didn't have enough money to pay her dues for the sorority, and I paid the dues for her sorority. The reason I didn't like the sorority. I didn't even like her being in a sorority, but I did it because it was important to her. But the reason that I did it wasn't to impress her, wasn't to make her feel like, oh man, yeah, like my boyfriend will do anything for me. The reason that I did it was because if I was going to marry her, I wanted her to know from the very beginning of our relationship that money would never become more important to me than she is to me. I wanted her to know from the very beginning of when I had little, I was willing to sacrifice my comic book subscriptions so that we could go to the movies. I wanted her to know that money and possessions would never be more important to me than she was going to be to me. So if she married me, she didn't have to worry that 15 or 20 years down the road, I would become more obsessed with money and things than I would be with her. What you do when you're first dating communicates about who you're going to be. So if you don't want to get a job, or you don't want to sacrifice some gaming, you don't want to sacrifice some hobby, whatever it is, to be able to actually provide for a girl when you're first starting to date, or to be able to pay for her, to be able to pick her up, to do all those things, like you're not ready for dating, you're still kind of a boy, you got to grow up. You got to realize you got to give up some things in order to have the things that you really desire, right? Guys, if you're married, this does not mean that you have to make more money than your wife. It's not some ego trip thing where you're trying to compare, trying to make sure that you make more money than your wife. That is not what it's about. But what it has meant inside of the context of my marriage with Jen was that when we had children and Jen wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, I needed to make sure that I was making enough money to provide the opportunity for that. We made decisions consciously about the house that we bought, about the place that we lived, about the job that I had. I went to work. I actually stepped out of one job and stepped into a new job that would have a lot more responsibility. It would be a lot heavier, but it would make a little bit more money, so that whenever we started a family, that meant that Jen could be stay at home with the kids. It also means that if in the future Jen wants to not work where she works right now, but wants to go back to school to continue her education, or wants to focus on our family, and we can have a point of agreement about that, it means I would go get a second job. I'd pick up a night shift somewhere if it meant helping us make ends meet in order to provide for my family. But in today's world, it doesn't just mean that. It doesn't just mean that you can bring in income, because it doesn't matter how much income you bring in if we as men or inside of our marriage are recklessly spending outside of our means. So it also means that I live within a budget. It also means that I have an allowance, and it's not as much as a lot of my friends. A lot of the people that I know can buy more things than I can buy, and I have to live with that, because I want to make sure that we're living inside a budget, because I want my wife to feel secure. I want her to be provided for. It's our responsibility together, my wife and I, to provide for our family, but I take the lion's share of the burden of ensuring that we are provided for. If you really want to pursue a healthy romantic relationship and a healthy marriage, continuing to pursue, protect, provide, and proclaim are central to having a healthy romantic relationship. And I know, guys, it seemed like I came down on us tonight. And in some cases, when it comes to this sort of stuff, the onus is on us. We are to lead our families. We are to lead our relationships. We are to step up. We are to take responsibility for these things. And this isn't just a macho beat my chest, I want to be a man thing. No, this is just what it means for God created us in a way, and God has mandated us with specific things in this life. And it's time. Sometimes we just need to own up to those things. I don't need to provide an extravagance for my family. We have an agreed upon sort of lifestyle and quality of life, and we have an agreed upon level, but okay, that's what we want to live at. And it's not extravagant, it's humble, but it's what we like, it's what we love, and we're comfortable, right? And there's moments that things are a little bit more scarce, and if I got to pick up some extra work, I do that. I have to pursue my wife. I have to actively be a part of her life. I have to actively be a part of our relationship, actively be a part of my kids. My kids, my wife, they don't want an absent father. They want someone who's actively pursuing them. I have to protect them, watch over them, protect them from myself, protect them from the forces around them, protect them spiritually from false teachers. I got to know my Bible well enough to be able to call out false teaching whenever I see it, to protect my family spiritually. I gotta continue to pursue, protect, provide. And then lastly, here's the last one. I almost forgot. I almost completely missed the fourth P. That would have been a bummer. Our last P comes from the very end of the book of Ruth. I was like, man, I feel like I'm missing something. Yeah, I'm missing the fourth of the four Ps. Pursue, provide, protect, provide. Here it is, last one. Then Boaz said to the elders and to the crowd standing around, "You are witnesses that today I have bought from Naomi all the property of Emelchek, Kilion, and Mahlon." Might have mispronounced those. You can deal with it. "And with the land I have acquired Ruth the Moabite widow from Mahlon to be my wife. This way she can have a son and carry on the family name of her dead husband. and to inherit the family property here in his hometown. You are all witnesses today. Now, this is like a 3,000-year-old story, right? And so like this is some very outdated, some pretty outdated dating advice, right? But after Boaz pursues, he then protects, he then provides, and then at the very end of the story, he goes in front of sort of like the city council, he goes in front of all the elders, and he proclaims Ruth as his wife. He claims Ruth. Now, that might seem a little weird and backwards, but I think the principle outside of 3,000 years, like inside of the historical context, I think it still translates today. It's our job also then, guys, to proclaim our girlfriend, our wives, to support them, to speak well of them. If someone speaks poorly of my wife, I'm going to step in and defend her. You're not going to catch me speaking poorly of my wife. You're not gonna catch me trying to embarrass her. You're not gonna catch. Sometimes she's embarrassed, even by pre-service. But there's a big difference between being embarrassed for me and being embarrassed because of me. I don't mind it when my wife's a little embarrassed for me, right? Because I'm a goofball. But I don't ever want her to be embarrassed because of me. I don't ever want to bring shame upon my wife. I want to protect her honor. I want to speak highly of her. With my friends, I want to speak highly of my wife. Inside of my ministry, I want to speak highly of my wife. I want to elevate her. I want to encourage her. I want people to know that I think she's the most amazing woman in the world. Guys, if you're single and you're like, I don't have anybody to proclaim, that's fine. But are you actively practicing and preparing for proclaiming? Because if you're constantly looking at porn, you're constantly saturating your brain in the very opposite of honoring women. You're participating in and celebrating the degeneration of women. You're celebrating the dehumanization of women. You're celebrating and continuing to participate in the destruction of women through porn. And as someone who was addicted to porn for most of his life and only the last handful of years have really found true freedom for that, can I just say that after several years free and clear of pornography addiction, my mind has finally cleared and all of that toxic, eros, erotic sort of sensuality has been washed out of my brain, and I can see clearly for the first time. As I'm not throwing stones as someone who hasn't experienced it. I know what it's like. I have firsthand experience. I've been there. I've been in the trenches. I've been fighting for freedom and only really found it over the last handful of years. I've been fighting for years and years in counseling, looking for freedom. I get it. But if you're continually saturating your brain in something that dehumanizes women, when you end up in a relationship, it doesn't just impact the way you view a woman sexually, it also impacts the way you view women in general. You're far less likely to honor and proclaim if your mind has been saturated in that. I'm telling you now, if you're single, work at breaking free. Don't embrace it. Don't embrace it. Don't accept it. Don't wallow in it. Don't buy into the cultural idea that every man does it or that it's the thing that you need to do. Your brain can be broken free of the constant fog of porn addiction. And you can begin to see women in a new way. Not in a way that's just degrading, not in a way that's just dehumanizing. Pursue, protect, provide, proclaim. The 4 P's that I really think exemplify healthy, long-lasting marriages, healthy, agape love. Not just eros love, not just romantic love, not just carnal desire, but self-sacrificing, fulfilling agape love. The closest that we get to understanding Christ's love for us, the church. Which brings us to our apply it point this week as we get ready to close out. It's this: I will seek agape, not eros, in my romantic relationships this week. Listen, this could be just preparing your brain if you're single. Preparing yourself, get out of the eros mindset, out of the thirst trap mindset, get into the self-sacrificing, loving mindset. It could be preparing yourself to pursue, protect, provide, proclaim, taking a step towards that. If you're dating in here, man, it could be practicing these things inside of your relationship. Practice these things consistently inside. Continue to pursue, continue to provide, continue to protect, continue to proclaim the person that you're dating, right? If you're married here, man, this could be looking at how do I actually actually exhibit agape and not just eros inside my marriage, because inside of our marriages we can easily fall into eros. Like, we just want the simple thing, like we just want sex, we just want the simple trick, we just want it. Like, we become selfish in our desire and our carnal desires, even inside of our marriages. We detach sex from love. We detach love making from love. We can just become sort of like machines, or we're just sort of like meeting and greeting, and that's all that it really is. Like, pursue agape inside your romantic relationships in this week. That self-sacrificing, unconditional love that we experience from Jesus. Now, before we go tonight, I did promise a couple of quick tips, and I'm going to provide them because we have the time. I thought I was going to run out of it, but we have the time. The sermon Pastor Mark is delivering is very similar to the one spoken at Charlie Kirk prior to his departure from this side of life to meet the Lord. I didn't even know that, Cubester. I didn't even know that. Let me give you 5 tips. 5 tips for singles, 5 tips for singleness, 5 tips for dating, 5 tips for marriage. I'm going to close down with that. Then we're going to pray, and we're going to go to the Lord's Supper. Here's 5 tips if you're single, and we'll post these things. We'll gather them and post them in the Discord later, okay? Number 1, don't settle on the things that are important. Character, convictions, and beliefs. Don't just settle on things that are important. Okay? Beauty is only skin deep. As a person who's like going to the gym religiously right now, I'm a living example of that. I used to have a really good metabolism, be able to stay thin. It was like one summer or one fall, like September, October, ate a lot of chicken pot pies. It completely destroyed my metabolism and just started putting on weight. Like that, it fades, guys. It fades. Don't settle on the things that are important. Character, convictions, belief. Number 2, grow, develop, and get better while you have the time. Be more focused on investing in yourself than you are in finding a partner. Build yourself. There's few things that are more attractive than somebody who's constantly investing in and building on themselves to make themselves better. At the same time, the opposite is true. Desperation. Number 3, desperation is one of the most unattractive qualities in a potential partner. Desperation is one of the most unattractive qualities in a potential partner. And this does extend. Like, some of these principles are good for singleness, but they also extend into marriage, right? If you're desperate inside your marriage all the time, it also is really unattractive, right? Number 4, become comfortable with rejection. It is a part of life. This goes for guys and girls in our culture today. Be comfortable with, I would say guys be more used to it, but be comfortable with rejection. It's a part of life. Just learn to embrace it. You're just going to experience it. Don't fear it. If you got to desensitize yourself to it, desensitize yourself to it. Like, go through a string of asking people out if you're single, if you have to, just to get used to being rejected, because rejection is just a part of life. It won't always happen. Number 5, resist sexual sin even when it appears to have limiting consequences. Resist sexual sin even when it appears to have limits on its consequences. Okay, 5 tips for dating. If you're dating, you're wanting to be dating, here's 5 tips for dating. 1, only enter serious relationships with people you are compatible with and your convictions around faith, family, and ideology. Nothing wrong with dating. We have this like weird mantra inside of our culture that like if I go out on a first date, that like we're like locking down life forever in it, right? Or like there's all these sorts of memes about what it looks like to date in 2025 that's out there right now. And I'm not in the dating game, but I will say this, like, get to know somebody's understanding of what they want from a family, what their convictions are around belief. And if you want to go out on some dates with people and get to know people, there's nothing wrong with that, but only enter serious, committed dating relationships with people that you align with when it comes to your convictions around faith, family, and ideology. Next, if your partner sucks now, just know that they're on their best behavior. If you're dating them, they're on their best behavior, okay? If they suck now, they're going to suck worse whenever you're married to them, right? They're on their best behavior now. There's going to be days they're going to be on much worse behavior later. If you can't deal with how much they suck now, you're certainly not going to be able to deal with how terrible they are whenever you're married. Next, number 3, don't date to save someone. Date to see if you can be yoked to someone. Don't date to save someone. Date to see if you can be yoked to someone. In other words, do not date just to see like, oh, they're my project. If they just change this, and this about themselves, you don't know how many of those things are just intrinsic to them and have been ingrained in them for many years, and take a counselor to be able to start working through over the next decade. Like, it's probably not you who's going to date them out of bad habits and a bad way of looking at life. So date someone to see if you can yoke yourself to them, if you can carry life's burdens together, if if you can pull alongside them. Don't date them in order to save them from something. Number 4, this is going to be a little old-fashioned, but I'm just telling you, this is what my wife and I did. I think it was super healthy, and I wouldn't have changed it for a world. Number 4, wait until you're married to move in together or to have sex. Wait until you're married to move in together or to have sex. I'll tell you this, sex complicates things. I'll also say this, moving in together statistically, it just doesn't work out for people. And so I would say this, wait till you're married to move in together to have sex. Number 5, this, pray and be aware of when God answers those prayers in a potential spouse. Pray and then be aware of when God answers those prayers in a potential spouse. The reason I knew that I was going to marry Jen was because I had spent years praying for God to level me out. I was a very emotional person, up and down, up and down, up and down. I could never level out. And I was constantly praying, God, please help me control my emotions. And as soon as I started dating Jen, even like remotely seriously, I just freaking leveled. I just leveled out. And it was a realization to me that God had not answered the prayer for a levelness in my emotions before, because he was going to use it to confirm who I was supposed to be with in the future. So pray and then look for people that God is revealing to you. He's answering sometimes long-standing prayers through someone else. Number 5. Oh, that was number 5. Let's go for our last one. 5 tips for marriage. Number 1, your spouse knows what you, if you're married in here, your spouse knows what you say and do. They do not know what you think or feel. You didn't marry an empath. You didn't marry a telepath. They can't read your thoughts. They can't feel your feelings. If you don't take your thoughts and feelings and to make them into words and actions, nobody can make decisions off of it, including your spouse. Quit pop quizzing your spouse thinking that they should know what you're thinking. They're never going to know what you're thinking. They don't even want to know what you're thinking, quite frankly. And so, like, quit. If you won't take your thoughts and feelings and turn them into words and actions. A lot of times inside of the marriage, it's the wife that kind of gets in the trouble for this. Not always, but quite frequently, right? Where it's like her husband is supposed to guess what she wants. If you want something, tell him that you want it. On the flip side, guys, quit masking all of your feelings with other feelings. Very frequently when guys are afraid, they just act angry and then they can't figure out why their wife responds in anger, which just exasperates their fear and makes them more angry. If you're afraid, if there's one relationship, man, that you're supposed to be able to be intimate enough to share that you're afraid, it's within the context of your marriage. Quit masking one feeling with another and then getting ticked off that your wife responds to the wrong feeling. She doesn't know what you think and feel. She only knows what you say and do. Tip number 2, being intellectually faster does not make you right. Being intellectually faster does not make you right. In most marriages, you have one person who's an external processor and one person who's an internal processor. Normally, the person who's the external processor needs to talk about the problem in order to come to a solution, and they're intellectually faster than their spouse. But their spouse is an internal processor, meaning they need time to think about it, but their IQ and ideas are better and higher than their spouse. If you think that you're right simply because you can back your spouse into a corner or you can back them up against a wall and you can just berate them until you come out on top and you think you're winning, you're not actually winning. You probably are just getting a worse idea through and you're making your family and your relationship worse off because you think you know the right idea, when in reality, you're just faster at arguing than the other person. Being faster at arguing doesn't make you right, and it might be making your marriage worse. Stop assuming you're right just because you're intellectually faster than somebody. Number 3, keep pursuing each other even if you are married. Once you get married, that's not the end of the pursuit. Continue to pursue one another. Continue to date one another. It doesn't need to be expensive. It doesn't need to look extravagant. During the season where my wife and I have young children in our home, Friday night is date night. We hang out with the kids. We do some family night. We throw on something on TV. We play a board game. We don't ever even go out. Maybe we pour a drink. We just hang out together. Friday night's date night. We keep that on the calendar. Keep it on the calendar for you. Number 4, keep no secrets. Do not allow secrets to creep into your marriage, even small secrets. Small secrets give permission for big secrets. Number 5, leave and cleave. The Bible tells us to leave our family of origin and cleave to our spouse. Girls, this means that when you leave and you get married, you can't call your mom every single day and complain about your husband. You are to go now to your husband and bring everything first and foremost to him. That's the space where you work out your stuff. Quit taking your marriage problems, separating them and putting them somewhere else. Guys, if you're leaving and cleaving, that means that there are things that your friends no longer get to know. They might not understand it, especially if many of them are single, but when you cleave to your wife, there are things that are sacred that stay within your marriage that can no longer go out to your friendships. Quit turning to them for support. You need to begin turning to your wife for support. That doesn't mean that you don't have a support network around you. That doesn't mean you can't vent to a trusted friend, but it does mean that you need to be going to your spouse first. You leave your family of origin, your friendship circle of origin, and you cleave to your spouse. Leave and cleave. Okay. Pursue, protect, provide, proclaim. 5 tips for singles, 5 tips for dating, 5 tips for marriage. I hope that tonight leaves you in a place where you find yourself encouraged and challenged. If you're single, I hope you're encouraged. You have some place to go. Maybe you have something to work on. You're reinvigorated to properly and in a healthy way pursue. Maybe you're going to get away from pornography. Maybe you're going to get away from thirst traps. Maybe you're going to get away from an obsession with eros love and can start looking for the correct character in people. Maybe you know now, man, I need to work on myself in order to be worthy of pursuit. Perhaps, maybe you're not single. Maybe you're dating. You're like, yeah, we need to really begin practicing these things inside of our relationship. Maybe we need to pump the brakes on some stuff. Maybe we need to make some changes. If you're married, hopefully it's reminded you of stuff. And in the flurry of raising children, being married for over a decade, it's easy to forget about some of the principles that drew you to one another and made marriage work. Continue to allow these things to shape and form your marriage, to pursue, protect, provide, and proclaim inside of your marriage in order to keep a healthy relationship, in order to keep a healthy marriage. Ultimately, I believe that families become the bedrock of our society, and families are formed by loving, agape level love relationships inside of husbands and wives. I pray that our church would be full of men who feel challenged to step up and be everything that God has called them to be with inside their romantic relationships, to set aside and to look away at the eros trap that the world continues to provide for us, instead turns their attention to God-honoring, loving agape love. I pray that the women in our congregation would experience it firsthand at their spouses, with the people that pursue them, that they would continue to exemplify that agape, selfless, self-sacrificing love inside of their romantic relationships. Let's pray together. Father God, I thank you for tonight. And I know, man, my tongue was a mess. I talked really fast. There was a lot of content to get through, and it was a little bit sloppy. But I pray, Father, that your message, whatever it is that you once spoke, would have been spoken tonight, that it would touch the hearts of people who are here at Lux, Father. I pray, God, that it would strengthen marriages, that it would build relationships, that it would encourage and challenge those of us who are single, who maybe don't want to be single. We want a relationship, but we don't know exactly how to pursue that or how to make that happen. I pray for those of us that are dating, that it would cause a point of conviction if one needs to be, that it would encourage us to deepen our relationships. Father, I ultimately pray that we would learn to pursue, provide, protect, proclaim inside of our romantic relationships, inside of our marriages. In your name we pray. Amen.
It was lonely in the dark, but you were working. It was painful, it was hard, but you were working all things for my good. Couldn't feel you at the time, but you were working, full of questions, wondering why. But you were working all things for my good. When I look back over my life and I think how good you have been, and my soul sings, great is your faithfulness. When I get your love on my mind, I get grateful all over again, and my soul sings, great is your faithfulness. Oh, know when, don't know how, but you always do it somehow.